traditionally speaking, as African women, you are expected. It's not even a question of whether you're gonna get married. Try today and say, I'm not getting married. Try. But at the same time, I think you get to a certain age as a woman where if you're not married, that becomes all there is to you. You could have all the accomplishments, all the accolades, all the experiences, but if you're not married, they will qualify you as an unmarried woman. Period.
You want to see Kelele? Roll up my weed, let me be Kelele. As I spend my money.
Hello, and welcome to your favorite podcast, Bita Leaf and Banter. I'm your host, Awa, aka Fine Gal. This is my co-host, Tazi, aka Call Me Tazi. Tazi, say hi to the people.
Hi, people. How's it going? How's it going? How's it going?
Tazi, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I can't complain. It's a little chilly today. I came from a
Yeah.
chilly location. I still feel a little chilly.
Yep. It's fall. I'm so excited. Fall's my favorite season.
You know, I think my fall outfits, my winter outfits just hit. It just hit different.
You know, you a jacket guy too. So your
If
jackets,
you need
I'm
jacket
very excited.
advice, I'm
This
the
your guy.
guy.
This your
Just,
guy. This your
just,
guy.
just
This your
bang my
guy.
line. I'm giving away jackets as well. So if you need jackets, I'm giving away jackets from last season. Hit my line.
Humanitarian.
You
You're doing the
know,
Lord's miracle. You are.
I
You are.
try.
You are. You are. All right. So today we're gonna talk about one of my favorite topics because I got a lot to say. I got a lot to say with this one. So we're gonna talk about dating and marriage as a first gen and the unique complexity of this in a
I got
a new
I
world. We're
got a lot
navigating
to
this in a new
say. A
world.
lot to say.
So there's a tug and pull for us between tradition and like the modern world that we are in.
This
So
is
we're gonna tap
true.
into how we balance all of
Yeah,
this as
yeah,
we approach relationships.
yeah.
Okay. So the first question, Tazi, I have for you is, what is the biggest challenge that you think in there is in dating as a first gen African?
The biggest man. There's so many, so many challenges.
I'm starting off
All
hot.
right, yeah. I guess the biggest challenge is majority of time when you're talking to women, especially African women who are first gen as well, whether from the same tribe as you, they are being understand that they are loaded with a lot of information now, and
What do you mean by that?
so they are listening to podcasts, they're reading books, they are um they are educating themselves on relationships and how relationships should look like in a healthy way.
Mhm.
Some information good, some information bad, some information very good, some information very bad, but just understand that they got a full clip. And also understand that they expect that you have done or should be doing the work on yourself to be with them, and it's not an excuse for you to not have done the work on yourself to be with them. So it's a lot of when you talk to them, sometimes in my experience you they or in my experience from listening to what other first gen African guys are talking about, it's like they are met up with conversations that women are having with them or words that women are using that they don't even know what the woman is talking about. So for example, if a girl asks you about like emotional intelligence, this is a very new thing to African men. Very, very new.
Oh, we know.
You can
We are aware.
you can describe it to some of them. They can tell. They can maybe tell you a little bit, but for the most part, they probably won't know unless they're really in tune with a lot of conversations going on with the internet. Like they will not be able to tell you what emotional intelligence is. So you just have to understand that that is also an uphill battle. So that's
Okay.
something you run into.
And you said this is in regards to dating African first gen African women.
Yes.
So what do you think the challenges are for first gen African men or within first gen African men when it comes to dating and marriage?
So my challenge, like the challenge in being with the women,
Or being I'm saying the challenge in being a man what do you think are the challenges in dating? Like, think about like the challenges that your father faced versus the challenges that you face. What
Okay.
are the challenges that you face that are different?
I think there is an expectation for for African men to kind of rise to an especially African men of my generation to rise to an expectation that is kind of unrealistic. And by expectation, I mean it could be financial, it can be emotional, it can be physical. That is, in my opinion, unrealistic. For example, there is a narrative like maybe that at the age of 24 or 25, as a man, you should be a millionaire. You should be able to to provide the provision of a millionaire. That
I'm
is
nice. Look at my eyes.
look. That is what that is what it seems like
Mhm.
when in having conversations with now when you dig further, and I will say as dudes, just sharpen your language and understand and know how to talk to women. When you dig further and talk to the women, you kind of realize that it ain't nothing to be too scared about. She just want to be a little comfortable.
Right. I mean, I agree to an extent. I think the challenge is that the ways in which we are going about finding partnership is different than our parents,
Yeah.
whereas a lot of our parents either were in more arranged situations where someone was like, "Oh, I got a wife for you,"
Mm-hmm.
or you just marry somebody that you kind of grew up with or knew of in school, and basically like the options, you just don't have as many options.
Yeah.
They didn't have as many options, whereas us, there's this kind of feeling that you have all these options, so you're never really satisfied.
Yes.
You're never satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
And two, I think at our age, the things that our parents were able to do are no longer as feasible at this age,
Mm-hmm.
which is why a lot of times when women are asking for certain things at this age is because at this age our fathers were able to provide those things because it wasn't as
Mm-hmm.
hard to
Mm-hmm.
provide those things, whereas now it's a lot more challenging. The expectations for men of this generation are different because the world is different for men of this generation. It's literally a different country. Like it's a different world,
Correct. Correct.
and we're trying to manage the modern way of dating and building relationships and trying to align our traditional values with those things as well. And like there's just a clash, I feel like, with where our parents come from and how marriage and relationships worked versus the world that we are in, and a lot of the advice that we are given is from the context of their world, not ours.
For sure. For sure. Exactly.
You know what I'm
Exactly.
saying?
Yeah, I agree.
So we're kind of winging a lot of stuff. We're doing a lot of first. It's a lot of first time stuff for us. Like
I agree. I
we're
agree.
all kind of figuring it out on the job, and it's a hot fucking mess. Just want to put that out there.
I think we're making the best out of it. We're making the best out of it. We
And I think
trying.
we're gonna end up in the same place. I just think it's gonna be done in a different way because I'm still seeing a lot of marriages. Like I remember there was one month where every day I was seeing proposals. I was like, okay, so people are still getting married, bro. Like
Yeah, people
this
are still getting married. People are still getting
this
married.
whole anti-marriage, anti-relationship shit, it's not real. Like people are still very much in long-term relationships. Their man
Mm-hmm.
still getting on that knee, their ring still big, the recipes are being kept.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that there's a lot of chatter in between, which makes it seem like that is not the case.
For sure.
So, you know. So the next question I have for you is, how have you balanced respecting your family's culture, especially you? This is a good question for you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
How have you balanced respecting your family's cultural expectations while pursuing a partner?
Yeah.
And has this pressure impacted the type of people that you go for and how you like approach relationships, knowing what the expectation is for you?
Yeah. Okay. So very great question. Great question for me. So
Thanks.
how I go about it is this. It's very simple and it's very black and white, which is who at the end of the day, what it really boils down to is the understanding between you and that woman.
Hmm.
I understand at the end of the day that I'm going to have to live with this person for the rest of my life,
Forever.
forever, you know?
Mhm.
And I know there is a pressure, a social expectation for that person to conform to the culture and norms of your people, and for the children to be raised in that manner. I get it. Um, but I like to get real granular when it comes to things like that. And I'll be like, all right, so how many times a year do I need to meet up to this social expectation? Let's say five, 10 times. Okay,
Mm,
how many times a year do I have to do X, Y, and Z? Or will my wife have to do X, Y, and Z? Maybe 5, 10 times a year. Then I'll say,
mm,
okay, outside of those social expectations, what who am I not? What matters after that? It's the dealing between me and that person.
right.
So it's like, okay, so 80, 90% of the time, I'm going to have to make sure it's that what's going on between myself and the person has to really align. So then I'm like, all right, so this social expectation shit is like, I look
You
at it
know,
more so like this. I look for a wife first.
right.
If it just so happens that the woman is within my tribe, fine and good. I go marry her more. I'm not go. I won't. I'm not gonna argue. But she gotta be a wife first.
Mm,
That's just what it is. And so I don't let anything outside of that distract me. And if she doesn't fall within the cultural norms of my people, I'm about one man, and I do give preferential whatever to
to your
to
people.
my people. I'll give it to them. I listen to the Bangla girl first when she states her case, so I let her get first in line. For but if she don't fall within what I'm looking for, I'm not just gonna pick her just because she's the Bangla girl and there's somebody else who is actually fitting what I'm looking for. Fuck that. Hell
Right,
nah. I'm not setting
right,
myself up. So
right.
that's how I look at it. And it's hard, man. It's
Mhm.
difficult. It's very difficult. It's very
Yeah,
difficult.
I mean, me being a woman, and women carry the culture. That's what I
Yeah, the
was
first
raised to
transmitted the
know.
culture.
Women carry the culture. I feel like for me, it has mostly been about having the same values rather than having the same culture. But I will also say that I tend to date men who have very similar cultures to me.
For sure. Hmm.
So I don't necessarily have to explain certain things because also I don't like explaining certain things.
Yeah,
Like I don't, I
yeah,
don't, I
yeah.
don't I don't like when you have to have that conversation of like, oh, these are the social norms of my people,
Hmm.
and someone like is like, why? I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I don't like that conversation because it highlights that there's a fundamental
Yes,
difference.
yes, yes, yes.
This is not just about whether I like you or not, or whether
Hmm.
there is a foundational difference in how we exist in this world, and some of those differences,
I
me personally,
I don't got the
I,
time to
I
explain
can't
it to
do.
you. I don't got the
I
time to
can't.
explain it to you.
I can't. I can't. But at least like certain things, for example, like how you behave around my parents.
Yeah.
Not every culture is gonna understand certain things.
Mm-hmm.
Some men of certain cultures gonna be like, but why?
Mm-hmm.
Why I gotta do this? I'm a man, your daddy a man. Why don't I don't like I'm not about to explain to you that this is
Mm-hmm.
just the way it
For
is,
sure.
you know?
For sure.
And like I think the benefit of dating outside your culture though is you get to question, you get to like get a different perspective of things that you've normalized. Because
Mm-hmm.
certain things are like, why do we do this?
Yeah.
But certain value systems, if you don't already have that, if that's not already a part of your culture,
Mm-hmm.
this not gonna
It's
work.
not gonna work.
The
Um,
traditions and the intricacies can be different. There can be nuances, sure, but the foundations can I can't if they're different.
I
I
had a
can't.
friend. I had a friend who he was African American who was marrying an African girl, and he was African girl, and the question of bride price came up. He was just like,
Hey,
yeah, he said dead ass, like, yo, he was just like, I ain't paying for no woman, straight up.
bro,
He said, I
I
ain't paying for no woman. I literally had to invite him over to my place, and I like, you need to sit down real quick. Sit down real quick and listen because you're about to mess up a good thing.
you want me to go tell my daddy that you not about to pay no what you like? No, I'm not doing like
And I
I
broke
can't.
down bride price to him as best as possible in the most simple way for him to easily digestible way for him to understand. it's not what you think.
It's not what you
It's,
think.
it's not what you think. It's a
It's bigger than you and
cultural
me.
norm. Like it's bigger than you. It's not what you think. It's not what you think. Just understand. It's one of those things that I can explain it to you, but also just do it, bro. Just do it. Don't argue. This is one of those things. Just don't argue. Just don't argue.
Argue with me, damn.
Yes.
Because like if you bring someone who starts to question and argue certain traditional practices, your parents will look at you and say, what is your problem?" They look at you and they be like, "What type of person are you if you are bringing a partner who is
Mm-hmm.
questioning is this your way of saying that you don't align with where you come?" It gives it. They take it as self hate. They take it as disrespect. Like
Yep, they do.
you think you're the first on this in this family, like.
Exactly.
And I don't want no smoke. Me personally, I don't want no smoke. I don't.
Mm-hmm.
So, my next question: how much pressure do you feel when it comes to your family with like getting married? Like, do you feel pressure from your family to get married? Is that a conversation that is
Yeah,
moving?
like I think, majority of first gen kids my age, specifically West African, I'm 30 years old. I turned 31 in 2 weeks, man.
Turn
Um,
it.
you know, will probably start getting pressure from their parents about marriage, about children. My father at my age, I think he already had about two kids, maybe. Yeah, I
Yeah.
believe so.
Mm-hmm.
My brother was born in '89. My dad was born in 1960. By '93, yeah. He had about two. He had two children.
Mm-hmm.
So you start getting that pressure,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's on one hand, I understand exactly where they're coming from, which is I do see the value in having your children young, and so that you're able to see your kids grow up. Like for the first time
Right.
in my life, I remember this was about 2 months ago. I was in the shower. I was like, if I get a woman pregnant, let's say she gave birth today, by the time my son or daughter turns 21, I'll be 51 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, then I start thinking of my health. I start
Right.
thinking of how physically capable I'm going to be at 51.
You'll be all right. You still young. You still good.
But you take into account health, America, what's your genes, your genetics, and you're doing all this to rationalize, am I healthy enough to see my kids move on
Grow up.
into the future?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where you yourself put the pressure on yourself. And I think it's in a healthy way because it comes from a place of like I just want to be able to make sure that what I procreate, I'm able to see it through. Um, I also take into account resources, like we do live in a day and age where like you need to be able to have kids and to raise kids in a healthy environment, in a conducive environment, costs money. Costs money. And for the most part, um, controversial, but for the most part, women don't want to pay bills. They want the majority of the what I refer to as the man bills to be paid by the men. And I don't knock them. I don't knock them. I hear y'all. And men really start seeing that type of paper when it like for real, 30 something, if they really really have put in the work in their 20s, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
40, where they really start seeing where they have built that nest egg to say I can go out and go find me a wife. But then at 30, 35, if you're having your first kid, how old, how many kids you want to have? Then you also have to understand that you can't pressure a woman into having kids when she don't want to have kids. Like you just can't do it. So you
So
could.
you are 30, 31. So you are getting pressure at this age.
Yeah, for sure, for
Of
sure. Like anytime I go to like any event, any
a wedding, a
wedding
funeral,
or whatever,
anything.
whatever. My son, we're waiting for you. You know, you're a very important person in this community. The day that you get married, the whole outside will shut down. I'm like,
Oh,
I know,
oh,
I'm that nigga. I get it.
it's gonna be a parade.
It's gonna
Just
be a
to,
parade. It's gonna be a parade in my city.
yeah, for sure.
But yes,
I'm
yes.
gonna be there.
How about you?
You know what's so funny? Like, I think from my immediate family, there's not that much pressure for me to get married. Like, I don't know if it's because my family is so male dominant. Maybe if I had more sisters or if there was more women in my family, it would be coming more from the women.
Mm-hmm.
But like my immediate family, nobody bothering me. Nobody's. But from I get a little bit from my extended family, especially since I'm the only girl. Yeah, there's like there's this undertone of like, oh, when you get married, it's gonna be a big deal. But no one is really pressuring me. Where I get a lot of pressure is like other Africans, like just Africans in the wild, just especially the elders of like, oh, what we need to fight church. Oh, church,
You know
yeah.
why you don't get pressure from your family?
Why?
Because you're pretty and smart. They know you're not gonna have a difficult time finding a man.
I mean, they right.
Even me. You know, sometimes I
Yeah,
forget. I don't keep track of. I don't keep track that you and my sister are the same age or whatever. I don't even be seeing y'all or thinking like that. There's pressure or there could be pressure on y'all because I'm like they're gonna be fine, bro.
yeah. I mean,
They're gonna
the
be
day when I
fine.
decide, I mean, too. I think too. My family wanted to, especially my parents wanted to make sure that I built a strong foundation for myself first,
Mm-hmm.
because when I was in a relationship, it was always make sure he doesn't stop you from going to school, or make sure he doesn't stop you from doing what you need to
Yeah,
do.
yeah, yeah.
So now that I'm kind of towards the end of like building that foundation where I finished school and like I'm kind of in my career,
Mm-hmm.
maybe now I'll start feeling the pressure a little bit more. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, for the most part, nobody bothers me.
Okay. Okay.
I appreciate that. Like I said, it's the Africans in the wild, the
Mm-hmm.
aunties in
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
wild of like, oh, and I will say the one thing that has changed drastically in my experience is now people don't ask me, do I have a boyfriend? It's, are you married? And
Yeah.
I'd be like, I'm a child. Don't be asking me inappropriate questions like that,
Nah, nah.
because
I get it. I get it. Like even with me,
that
like
question always makes me itch. I'm like, what do you mean?
for
Am I married?
sure. I get it. I get it.
That's still I'm a 26-year-old. I'm turning 17 next year. Why would you ask me that?
I look, even with me, like I don't think I've only brought one person, one woman around like my parents. For the most part, I always wanted to my sister and my family to understand that if I'm bringing a woman around, it's because I want to marry her. I'm not about to bring just a random girl around that I. For a long time, my dad really questioned whether I was straight. He ain't
Yeah.
never seen me with no, I don't talk about it because I was raised to believe keep that nonsense. Whatever you're doing there, just keep it outside. It's not. So for a long time, because one day he had said something to me, I was like, I like women, sir. Like it was what I was
You need
real
to
young
clarify.
too. It was like a girl walking down the street. He was just like, do you think she looks attractive? I looked at him like, I mean,
I
yeah,
know
but
that
that's
is
a
when I see one.
you have never asked me this kind of question before, but it
That is
was
funny.
again like it was set up for me to like I always had that level of respect where if I'm bringing a woman to my parents, if I'm bringing her around, it's because I want to marry her.
You know what's funny? I kind of have the opposite experience a little bit where I my brother started bringing women around that they didn't necessarily insinuate that they were going to marry these women. They were just kind of like bringing them around on some like, oh, this is the girl that I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents kind of didn't bat an eye. And me being me, I was like, y'all not about to hold me to a different standard.
Mm-hmm.
So I also kind of started bringing dudes around,
I
not
got
like
you. I
dudes,
got
like
you. I
multiple
got you.
dudes.
I got
You know
you.
what I'm saying? Like I brought one or two around just to
I got
my
you.
my goal was just to say, don't hold me to the standard of I can only bring guys around that I'm going to marry, while you're holding my brothers to the standard of, oh, when they're ready, they'll let us know. So I had to break a little bit of the double
The
standard
yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
You know, I stopped doing that though, because you know, when you break up with a dude, they keep asking about him. Then it's like, stop talking about that man. Like,
I don't talk.
he's
I don't even talk
gone.
about. I don't even know this guy anymore.
I don't know that man. Don't talk about him. Shut up. That's why I stopped. But I wanted to like break
Check the table a
that
little
double
bit.
standard of like you holding me to a higher expectation
Hmm.
than, you know. But my next question for you is, do you think your parents' expectation around marriage and dating is rooted in them wanting you to preserve the culture, or is it more rooted in like social status and like appearance and making the family look good? Or both?
I think they sometimes conflate the two, and I
Hmm.
think they sometimes make preserving the culture bigger than what it's supposed to be.
Hmm.
And for and I'll give you an example. So the what they sometimes confuse is like values, right? So they
Hmm.
associate people, for them it's like, oh, okay, people of this tribe are, they will do these particular type of things, and that is why the husband will never leave or the wife will never leave, or that's why you guys will stay together forever. When what you're really explaining is, no, there's a value system here that has been set up in this culture.
Hmm.
But it's not necessarily the culture you're looking for. You're looking for somebody with the value system. So they will
Give me an example of.
so for example, let's say you have a value and standard that it is just commonplace for the man to help his wife in the kitchen without complaining.
Hmm.
And it's typical of people of the Akum tribe to do that. And so they say, go and marry an Akum man because he will help you in the kitchen. It is true that an Akum man will help me in the kitchen, but if it's that you want me to find help in the kitchen, don't say marry an Akum man. Say find a man who has that value.
Okay, gotcha.
But what you come to find out is you just want me to marry an Akum man.
Right, but you try to
You
big up
feel me?
one
And it's like,
characteristic.
I get it. And I'm not knocking it, you know. I believe to an extent in preserving your culture. I do believe
Hmm.
in preserving your culture, but I would say that's, that's one of the pressures, conflicts that usually happens or usually
Right,
ensues. Um, yes.
and it's funny because I've had this conversation kind of with my parents, because my parents are, even though they're both Cameroonian, they're two different tribes,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like my mother was never fully embraced by my father's side of the family because she was of a different tribe, because he chose to marry a woman outside of their tribe.
Mm-hmm.
So, I tried to sprinkle and see what my father's advice to me would be, of like, okay, how do I go about looking for a man? And like, similar to what you said,
Mm-hmm.
well, in my dad's language, he just said basically, don't marry an asshole. Like, that was literally his advice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I think in his experience, he recognized that no matter if you're trying to reduce it down to preserving culture, that does not guarantee that you're going to end up with a good person or a good partner. And sometimes trying to preserve the culture, yes, that can be a way of making sure that your lineage and the traditional practices get passed down,
Mm-hmm.
but at what cost? You
Exactly.
know? So he kind of just told me like, don't marry an asshole, and try to find somebody that you can pass good values down to your children, versus being so concerned about the cultural tradition, especially being first gen. It's like, in this country, in this society, how much of our traditions are actually going to be relevant in our everyday lives?
Mm-hmm.
Not all of them. Maybe they might come in handy, like you said, 2 or 3 times a year, but
Mm-hmm.
on an everyday basis, it really comes down to the individual that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Those traditional practices may have to be sacrificed for the sake of finding good partnership, healthy relationship.
Mm-hmm. And it don't cost me nothing to, to teach my wife how, like,
Hey,
certain things.
exactly. The most like the essentials, you know?
Exactly, you know. So
Yeah.
so and again, in their defense, I understand. Like personally speaking, I would be shattered if you were to remove a Bangwa diet out of my like ecosystem.
Hmm.
Is there
Okay.
certain things that my wife gonna just have to just gonna have to get down and lay down like straight up?
Like she's
You're
got to
gonna
learn
need
it.
to learn how to pound for food. Like you need, Fuero has to be on the table. Achu soup
Right.
has to be on the table. It's a certain dishes. It's a non-negotiable, babe. I'll teach you how to make it,
Hmm.
but it's a non-negotiable, babe.
And if she love you, she gonna learn.
Exactly.
She gonna learn. There ain't gonna be no
And vice
issue. Okay.
versa. If you want me to make,
Exactly.
poulet deje, kati kati, whatever it is that you like, I'm with
Hmm.
it.
Hmm.
Fuko na njak.
Okay. Okay. So the next question. Now, at your 30 years of age, when people ask you when are you getting married, how do you respond to this question? Fair
I'll
enough.
say soon. When they
I
ask
mean,
me
is
this
it
straight up like that, I'll say soon or I'll say it's coming. It's coming. Don't worry, it's coming. It's coming.
is it? But the thing is, it's kind of in your control,
It's 100% of my control. Like, if I wanted to be married by next week, I could be married by next week.
right?
It's not a difficult thing to get married, though.
So your soon can be taken seriously soon.
For sure. Like, if I want to
That's
be
it.
married next week, I'll be married next week. It's not a difficult thing to get married.
Me, on the other hand,
Hmm.
this question, I don't like this question. I don't like this
It's
question, and
valid. It's valid. It's valid as to why
I
you
don't
don't
like this
like it.
question.
It's valid.
And for me, I feel like I just take this question as shade. Like, this question is just so shady to me. When you getting married, I'm like, so am I marrying myself? Like, what do you mean? When am
Hmm.
I getting married? The question should be, is there anybody in your vicinity that you could see yourself marrying? Not
Hmm.
when am I getting married? Like I can just get on one knee.
Yeah.
And I've also tried to dismantle the weight
Hmm.
that marriage has in the value of being a woman, particularly African women, because
Hmm.
traditionally speaking, as African women, you are
Yeah.
expected. It's not even a question of whether you're gonna get married. Try today and say, I'm not getting married. Try and see how they will react. But at the same time, I think you get to a certain age as a woman where if you're not married, that becomes all there is to you. You could have all the accomplishments, all the accolades, all the experiences, but if you're not married,
Hmm.
they will qualify you as an unmarried woman.
Correct.
Period.
Correct. And
And I hate that.
I know. And here's the thing.
I hate
To
that.
that point, I'm a expound on it a little bit further, right? My grandmother, for example, I differentiate between when somebody of my father's generation asks me when I'm gonna get married and somebody of my grandmother's generation. In my grandmother's generation, oh, your value as a man and a woman is determined on whether you're married or not,
Right.
for sure. And I can respect it. Why? When my grandmother asked me, I remember I told her, in my culture, Bangwa culture, when you do something significant in your life, for example, like getting your first job, first paycheck, it is the norm for you to take that paycheck and go and buy something for your dad or whoever's house you're staying in to say, okay, I worked, this is the money that I worked. I bought you guys something. Um, in the same light, if you get a new apartment, you move out of your people's place, you say, Daddy, I moved into my new place. Come and see where I stay. So my grandmother had never seen where I stay. And I told my grandmother, like, I would like for you to come and see where I stay. You know how I replied to me? She said in my dialect that technically I am a married woman, but I'm a widow. And I don't go to single men's house because what is a married woman doing in a single man's house?
Strict. Strict
For
as
that
hell.
reason, until you become a married man, I have no business going to your house. Bruh, I was shocked.
Wow.
I was shocked. But you know
Strict as
what? I could
hell.
I could respect it. And I'll tell you why I respect it. If you take single a single CEO versus a married CEO. Man. And they'll say, pick which one. Same guy. They're gonna pick the married man. They're gonna pick the married man. Why? Because single men are risky.
Fair enough.
Single men have no responsibility. Single CEO can wake up one day and say, I no longer want to be CEO anymore. But the married man,
You got shit to lose.
you got shit to lose. There's an expectation. The kids got to go to a particular school. The wife is part of some social club. The this, the that. You are part of some social club. The kids have whatever practice that you have to go and show up for. You have things to lose, and there's a social expectation. And it is also said that the stock price even goes up a little bit higher. So even in a lot of cultures, they rather do business with married men versus single men.
Right.
Because you just appear to be more trustworthy, which is
Right.
why part of the reason why men do get married is because they want to have a woman and whatever, but it's also to rise in society,
Right.
to be part of certain social circles. On the woman's side, the way society views women not getting married is this is a very selfish thing that you're doing.
Which is nonsense. Which is nonsense.
So
Nonsense.
all of the God-given nurturing that you're doing
It's
is
mine.
only for
I'll
you.
do what I want with it.
It's only for you.
Yes. Yes. I'm really like, I want to be a married woman one day. I hope somebody marries me one day. But I also want to.
I never heard you say that before. That's great.
And you'll never hear it again.
That's great. That's great. So
You'll
you
never
do
hear
want
it
to be
again.
married.
But I have also processed and accepted the idea that if I do not find I'm not looking for a perfect partner. I'm looking for somebody that I can genuinely say, I'm willing to do life with you. I'm willing to go through it with you because I trust that we will have each other's best interests and we will do our best to live a quality life. If I cannot find that man that makes me feel that way, I will not get married. And if I do not get married, I will not have children. Me personally. That may not be the narrative for all the girls. I I have already accepted that not getting married is also a possibility. And just because I don't get married, Jesus Christ himself was not married, dude. Don't forget. So when we say that Jesus had less value because he didn't have a wife, no, because his impact was still felt. So
Wow.
yeah, we can disagree. That's fine.
Jesus. Are we going as far as Jesus Christ?
We sure are. You people bring him into every single fucking scenario, so why not? Yeah, I don't know. I feel like as a woman, especially a woman in this age, it's like marriage is marriage. So many things about being a married woman are only being revealed now. And now that I'm getting everything, I'm like, hold on.
Well, and here's what I think has
Wait.
ultimately happened. I think that they have frightened men and women to the brink of destruction about relationships and marriage.
I
I
don't think
think
so.
100%. For
Okay.
example, like how many times would I hear stories about this? Very common among men. Well, if you marry her and y'all get a divorce, she's gonna take half your
Take all
stuff.
your shit.
She's gonna take half your stuff. And then you come and dig and be like, all right, so who took half your stuff? Nobody. Well, it happened to men. These are in very extreme cases. And in the cases where the men like lost everything, it's like people who are hyper successful, extremely wealthy, but they fail to include the millions of marriages that did work out.
Fair enough. I
You
mean,
know?
the thing is, I think for me, I don't think that I have been scared away from marriage by society. I think that I have been able to witness the marriages around me
Mm-hmm.
and the women around me.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been able to, especially as I'm getting older, especially as I'm in a position in my life right now that at the same age they weren't.
Mm-hmm.
I just have a different perspective because for me, I believe that I will get married. First of all, I will get married at a much older age than my mother,
Mm-hmm.
than my grandmother, than my grand. I will be the oldest married woman of my family lineage, particularly on my mother's side.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time I get married, I will have already set a foundation. I will already have lived a very full life. Whereas a lot of the women before me, their experiences, their exposure, a lot of the things that they were able to gain were in alignment with a man, in alignment with their husband. So their perspectives were limited.
Mm-hmm.
I get to go into a relationship not needing a man, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
I get to want that man.
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't find the man that I want to, I will just call it quits. I'll hang it up. Hopefully God favors me and just
Uh, like for me, it's like I don't.
because let me say,
Yeah.
for me, it's about sustainability.
Uh-huh.
Because what I'm seeing is a lot of women of a certain generation who got married young, who followed all the rules, who did everything that they were told.
Yeah.
At this time, when the children are grown, they are not, and a majority, if not all, of women I know also worked, contributed financially to the household,
Yeah.
were also nurturers and homekeepers and homemakers.
Yeah.
At this time in their life where they don't necessarily have all of that responsibility anymore, I'm seeing what is left of the relationship, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
what do I need to do ahead of time
I get you. I get you. I get you.
to make sure that I don't.
And what is left of the relationship from your perspective or from their perspective? Does it look bad from your perspective or their perspective?
I mean, from their perspective, I feel like it just falls in alignment with what they saw in the past, so it's no big deal. From my perspective, because I'm being raised in a different society,
Mm-hmm.
and I am coming from a different, I'm coming with different experiences and exposure as a woman. Like being a woman as a first gen woman is a very interesting experience because there's a lot of things that we are doing for the first time,
Yes.
you know? And to me, I have a lot of choices that I know that my mother, the women before me did not have,
Yeah.
you know? And they are at a point in their life where they did everything that they were supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And some of their husbands have second families. Some of their husbands are retiring and going back to their countries and not including them in the plans.
Mm-hmm.
Some of
Mm-hmm.
their
Mm-hmm.
husbands, the relationship is loveless.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I'm really trying to be proactive
Yeah.
and asking myself, not because I don't need a man. Some of them they got married because they needed they needed a foundation, and that man gave them that foundation. So
Mm-hmm.
they did what they. I don't have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I actually gotta like that nigga a little bit.
For sure.
And to me, I'm like, if I cannot find a man that I can see myself building with without him being a liability, I'm cool. I'm cool. I'm cool. Cause a lot of these marriages,
Mm-hmm.
African marriages, yes, a lot of the men are good, but a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the men are
Mm-hmm.
liabilities.
Mm-hmm.
And it will not be me.
I can respect it. I can respect it. I can respect it. I also can respect that, when you do a little digging, you see fault on the man, you see fault on the woman, and then you come to realize what it really boils down to is that there is an understanding that will happen between a man and a woman who is
Mhm.
married that nobody will ever understand. There
And
is a
that's right.
reason that that woman is staying there with that man outside of
Right.
abuse. I'm not talking of a controlling abusive relationship.
Right.
There is some understanding she has. There is some thing that keeps them bonded and molded together that has made them this way all these years that is rooted in love. You
Hmm.
know, I and I
And it's also rooted in survival.
it could be rooted in survival. I saw, like, for example, I saw a a like, I remember there was a point in time where, and this has happened on both my mom and my for my mom and my dad. There was a time that my dad and I were driving downtown somewhere, and my brother had FaceTimed me and said, "Mommy slipped and fell." The way my dad made a U-turn so quickly. So, and before he left the house, they got into a little argument, and he was just like, I said, let's go. One of them arguments. So the way he made a U-turn so fast, and he knew exactly what my mom needed, how to care for her in that
He's
exact
his wife
moment,
now.
and how to make her feel safe.
He's his
Though
wife.
they had an argument, I said, and this is what it's about.
And me, I hope to have it one day. I
And
do. But if I don't, I will wait.
and on the
I'll be
flip side,
fine.
the same thing happened to him, where it was just like, my mom could look into my dad's eyes, and he would say, I'm well. And she would tell him, you're not well. And
Mhm.
he would go to the doctor and find out he ain't well. Because she know that man.
A wife.
Because she knows that man.
A
Same
wife.
thing with me and all my brothers and sisters. My mom just knows when there's something off.
Yeah.
And so I think, when you get down to the nitty-gritty of the relationships, you understand that it's almost like any.
They locked in.
They locked in.
They locked
Is it
in.
fucked? Are there some situations that's kind of messed up? Sure.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm just saying I have a
you
choice.
do,
And I thank
you
the women before me for allowing me to have this choice.
do.
Moving on.
For sure, for sure.
So, what has been your dating history and the types of people that you dated? Have they all been African? Have you explored? And if you have explored, what's your experience been dating outside of your culture? And specifically outside of your culture, like non-Africans.
Damn, this put me on the spot.
this
This put me on the spot, man.
this breakfast.
Uh, you pick these questions out so well.
I sure did.
Uh,
I sure
all
did.
right, so fuck, man. I recently started dating to marry this probably like last year.
hmm
Before then, I was just outside.
You know.
I was outside. I was outside. What I would encounter outside of my community is um a lot of times when you're dating. I've never dated a non-black woman before.
hmm
Um, so I really couldn't give an opinion on how it is to date outside of my race.
hmm
Um, but I've dated African women and African American women, for the most part. Um, the African American women that I've dated for the most part liked me, were intrigued at my culture, but also I noticed there was this kind of like, you will get two things. You will get, the woman who is like, oh wow, this in this culture they really really treat women with a lot of I guess respect, and you have women who will try to take advantage of it,
hmm
and then you have women who would like misunderstand what it means to be treated with respect. So for them, it's like, oh, they get this misinterpretation that as an African woman do absolutely nothing, and there's like, no, there's a lot that comes with managing that man when you're dealing with that man. Yeah, for the most part, you're gonna pay the bills and whatever and whatnot. But then you have this like misinterpretation where they just feel like their job is to just lay down and just lay down, sit down, look at the TV, look pretty, wear makeup, go out with you, and that's the case, and do absolutely nothing. And by absolutely nothing, I mean absolutely nothing. And it's like that's just not what it is,
hmm
you know. Um, and on the dating to marry side, of for the most part, I want to marry somebody who reflects my culture as much as possible, and
hmm
that's usually somebody who's West African.
Right.
And it's been good. It's been good. It's
Good.
going great.
Good. Well, me as an African woman,
Yes, ma'am.
first first and foremost, I am never beating the uppity African allegations. It is what it is. I feel like African women, when we date, men of the diaspora, African men already know what's up. West African men, particularly, already know what's up. I don't know what it is about us. Like, we just bougie. But it's not like like you said, it's not like a bouginess that you just don't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like you will not treat me anyhow. You will not come and do me anyhow.
Correct,
Please,
correct, correct.
please. Because 9 times out of 10, my daddy, my brothers, my uncles, the men in my life take care of me.
Correct.
So as a man, you will come and take care of me.
Facts.
That's why I say I'm not beating the uppity African allegations, because yeah, you're not about to do me anyhow. So I feel like in the past, I was more open to dating other types of black men.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have been back reduced to mostly dating West African men, because I don't know. I think there's a little bit of fetishization of African women, even amongst other black men, where
For sure.
they try to put African women up against other women,
Mm-hmm.
and it comes off as like putting us on a pedestal, but it's kind of backhanded, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's kind of backhanded, where it's like there's this kind of tone of like, we're born to be wives or something. Like, oh yeah, like, I know you could cook. I know your daddy raised you right. I know you got a daddy at home. There's a certain,
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I'm like, so if I don't, then what? Like, I don't know. So that's the first thing. I feel like I've been reduced to dating mostly West African men, because there is a certain care that is taken when
Yeah.
dealing with me
Mm-hmm.
that isn't performative. It's
Mm-hmm.
just like a standard, and isn't like fetishy.
Talk to me about
So
how you talk to me about that what what you just explained. Talk to me about how it was when you visited the DMV.
my favorite place in the world. My favorite place in the world. Oh, I love the DMV. I mean, what I like about the DMV is the men just deal with women carefully.
Mm.
Deal with deal with
Mm.
women carefully. Things like I got heels on, so when I come, a seat is made for me because I got heels on. There's a
Mm.
there's a certain hospitality that just, no matter where I go, whether the men know me or not,
Hmm.
it just comes with the
You feel
environment.
me? Okay, okay,
And on
okay,
top of that, I feel like when I am in spaces, this is my
okay.
experience. So for everybody listening, please don't go out and say that this is how African women feel. This is how I feel.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
I feel like when I am in predominantly African American spaces, I do not expect the men to keep me safe.
Mm-hmm.
I don't expect the men to keep me safe. And as a matter of fact, I can almost anticipate that I may be in conflict with the men.
Okay.
Versus when I am in spaces of, whether it's mostly African men, men of the diaspora, I feel safe. And I feel like the men are going to keep it cute because women are around. And that is just something that is ingrained outside of just being out and about,
Mhm.
even at family occasions. When women are around, behave yourself.
Yes,
Like,
yes,
don't be
yes.
doing too much.
Yes. And the
You
feeling and
know?
and your feeling is not it doesn't come from nowhere. As a guy, when I'm in African American spaces, I feel my safety is contingent upon whether the men in that space is cool with me or not. So
And I don't like
if
that.
they mess with me, then they extend the safety to me. If somebody try to do me harm, they're like, "Yo, you're not gonna mess with him.
That's my boy. I
This
know
my
him.
boy." Versus, I could walk into any African club right now. If I identify as an African man, and how do you identify? If I do a little dance that you gotta kind of be African to do the dance, or you move in a kind of way, they
So you
know
know the lyrics to a
you know the
song, they can
lyrics of the
identify
song. They know
you.
you African. If there's any conflict without them knowing you, you generally kind of get protected as a man. As a woman, you generally
Right.
kind of get protected. That's just been my experience.
Yeah, like that whole, like, if I know you, therefore, even like as women, and this is where I feel a lot of empathy for African American women, because it's like
Yeah,
that protection is conditional in
correct,
their
correct,
spaces,
correct.
versus in mostly African spaces, it's not conditional. It's, you are a woman, and therefore you are protected, you are safe.
Hmm.
Like, it is a standard.
Correct.
So like even in dating, I feel like as there I don't know, there's just so many conditions. There's so many conditions to
Hmm.
like how I'm gonna be treated, if I'm gonna be treated well. Me personally, I don't like it. I don't like
I get it. I
it.
get it. I get it.
So I have been reduced, and like I said before, like I don't like having to explain like certain parts of my culture. I'm willing to be questioned about. I'm willing to explain, but I don't like when I'm being asked on some like that's dumb. You know what I
Yeah, yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like a tone of like whose idea is that? That's dumb. Like why
Hmm.
would I do? I don't. I'm not gonna. If I'm telling you that there's a bride price and you're telling me that's dumb,
Hmm.
we ain't got nothing else to talk about.
That's man, and like for like when even though this has never happened to me personally, I know it's happened to some of my friends, whereby like there's just a way you will come to my parents' place and present yourself. For example, this happened to me. This happened to one of my cousins. He invited his friend over to his place, and his friend came into his house and followed my cousin to his room. And
Hey, to his
yeah,
room,
because my
bedroom.
cousin invited him to the room. It's his man's. He invited him to
Oh, he invited him to
yeah,
the room.
to go play. I think to play video games. They were investing in crypto,
Okay.
some shit, you know. But he forgot. He never introduced the friend to his father. So in the middle of them being in his room, he's like, "Oh, yo, I forgot to, tell my dad that you was here, and like to show you to my dad." And he was like, "Let's go upstairs real quick." And he was just like, "Yo, just go to my dad. Just go up to my dad and say, hey, my name is such and such. Such and such friend who came over."
Mm-hmm.
And the dad was like, "Oh, welcome, welcome." That's it. Now, for the most part, he understood it, but he was just like, "Why?" He didn't understand that there had to really be a conversation for you to really introduce yourself to the dad, to the mom, to make your
Right.
presence be known. But that's a
Right. You
very,
can't just be up in
very,
people's
that's a
houses
very,
without
very, cultural, a very, very cultural thing. Don't come into
even
my house.
even coming into a space and not greeting people.
It's a very, very big disrespect. It's a
Be-
very, very
And
big disrespect.
I don't want to. I don't know. I just feel more comfortable if that's already in you.
Yep.
I don't want to have to tell you. Make sure you go and say hi to everybody. Like
Even me as a first generation, if my if I'm in the house and my sister brings her friend and she doesn't tell me, she doesn't kind of say, I tell, "Oh, my friend is here," I'll be like, "What's going on in this house?"
so you just bringing
It's just
strangers
unannounced. No respect for me.
unannounced.
You
Uh
know, I
Right.
operate the same way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's I don't know. That's been again me too. I've never dated outside of my race, but I've like dealt with men outside of my race, and I feel like in general there's stereotypes about black women in general that non-black men have that I don't have the time. I'm not interested in clearing shit up. I don't care. Whatever you believe it. And unfortunately, there is a limited pool of black men to choose from, but I will fight to the death. I will.
What's the wildest thing that you've ever experienced on a date on a date with a
A
whether African American?
with an African, hmm. With an African, this is like an older dude, and the African men are never beating the that man gonna lock you in the house allegation. What? What? The minute you are a pretty girl and you just I think I was telling the dude like, yeah, I'm in school and I'm interested in this and I do. He's like, why are you doing all that? You should just be some pretty. Some you should be a man's wife and just be in the house and be sitting pretty. I say, hell
Oh, I
no.
know what you mean by that, sir.
You know what I mean?
I know what you mean by that, sir.
I know what you
You want to
are.
lock me away?
You gonna lock me up. You gonna lock me up and you gonna make sure I don't have no friends and you gonna put 10 babies in me, and no, no. So I feel like with the African men, they always try to domesticate you. Or for me, it's always like you're a modern woman. You're a radical modern woman. I
Uh-huh,
always get them.
uh-huh. That's probably from the younger ones. From the youyounger ones.
That's definitely from especially the fob ones. That's also
Uh-huh.
why I don't really
You're
date
a
fobs
modern.
like that
Only a
because
young African
it's
will say that you're a modern woman.
you're a modern woman. I'm looking for traditional. I'm like, go and look for her. It's not here. It's
Mhm.
not here. Leave me alone. For the African American men, I feel like I said, a lot of the fetishizing of like, oh, this why I like African girls because y'all know how to treat a man. I'm like, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Mm.
It feels like they're trying to like downgrade their women, like downgrade African American. Oh, a woman in my culture would never. Women like you know how y'all are raised well. Y'all daddies raised. Y'all have daddies. I'm like, don't do
Don't
that.
do that, man.
Don't do
Don't do
that.
that.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
You don't know what this
Ugh.
girl's going through, man.
Yeah. So the fetishizing on another side, one side, and the super domesticating on the other side.
Yeah.
I like somewhere in the middle.
Hmm.
Give me some lukewarm. Okay, so my next question for you: do you think that there's a balance between love and tradition, or do you think that one will always outweigh the other?
No, I think there's a balance. I think there's definitely a balance, and that balance is going to be an agreement that's going to be made, a social agreement that's going to be made between you and your partner.
Okay,
You know, which is
and how do you have that conversation? Like, how do you find that
I
balance?
don't think necessarily it's a conversation. I think there will come a time where certain things of tradition will come into play, and you're going to be like, it's either gonna happen in a way where like you're either going to in that moment say we're not doing this, or
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna do this time for the image, but moving
Mm-hmm.
forward we're not doing this. We're not going to do this. This is the part. This is one part of tradition that we're just not going to follow through on.
What is one tradition that you could see yourself kind of letting go for the sake of your relationship with someone who may not be of your tradition or of your culture?
I don't think it's necessarily a tradition. I think Well, it could be considered a tradition. I think traditionally, men don't do as much of the cooking as women. And I could be speaking from a biased standpoint. I think it's fun to cook. I like cooking. It's cool. In my opinion, it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of fun. I think men should just do a little bit more cooking.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to do all the cooking. But I think, if your wife is tired, cook. I think that's
Ooh,
like
there was
it's a no-brainer.
speaking of, there was a viral tweet that was like going around, and it was like this guy tweeted. He was like, "Oh, my mother used to go to work
Yeah,
all
yeah, yeah. I
day."
seen that.
Did you see that?
I seen that, and they were like, "Wow, you normalizing suffering," or you
Nonsense.
know,
Nonsense.
and come back and
Yeah.
cook for us.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I feel like my dad was very domestic. Like my dad did it all. He cooked, he cleaned, he did the yard work, he did the car stuff. So I grew up with a man who, yeah, my dad still held the traditional like man of the house role, but he
Hmm.
was very much involved in every other thing. So that
Hmm.
is a requirement for me. You gonna get up in this kitchen and chop some onions, sir. Yeah. And I should feel comfortable that I can leave my children with you and they're not gonna starve.
For sure, for sure.
Imagine.
You don't.
My thing is, I feel like African men, if I were to be with an African man, I need that man to be more involved in the baby years, helping
Hmm.
out with the babies.
Hmm.
I should be able to leave my baby
Hmm.
with you and know my baby will be well. I think a lot of African men wait to participate in raising the child when it comes to like the time to discipline the child and
Hmm.
provide structure, but they're not as involved in those super early years.
Hmm.
And yeah, I think that that has been normalized and that has been made okay, that the woman is like the baby maker and the baby raiser.
Hmm.
And a lot of African men get to sit and kick their feet up for the first few years until the child requires, more structuring.
Hmm.
And that is something that I hope is dismantled in my man. So if you out there,
I think that's the. I think that is the I don't know because maybe it's anecdotal for me, but for all of my cousins, they daddy was really, really, at least my dad's generation here in the DMV area. Oh, the daddies was in their lives during
Not
the
just in their lives. Like I'm saying,
during the tender years. Like, for example, growing up, every
hmm
Sunday, my dad used to take us to DC with all the other Bangla dads who wanted to participate, Uncle
gross.
Nico, all the other Bangla dads, and they would just bombard us with information throughout the whole Sunday about historic elements of Washington D.C. This is just what they did.
But that's what I'm saying. Those are the years when like the kids need structuring,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm talking about the years
Cleaning
when
diapers.
cleaning
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
diapers, nighttime routines when the baby's sick. Like I want to be able to go out for the weekend
Mm-hmm.
and leave my baby
Mm-hmm.
and come and meet my baby well and fine. But I don't think that that is the case. And granted, we are very much, it takes a village type
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
culture where if it's not the mother, it's the grandmother, it's the aunties, the whatever. But I feel like a lot of men kick their feet back when it comes to those baby years and wait until it's time to do the structuring to get more involved.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay.
So that's my recommendation. That's what I would like.
Got you. Got you. I'll tell the men. I'll tell the men.
Tell them. Go on, shout it from the hills,
I'll tell
please.
the men.
Okay, last question. What is the biggest lesson that you've learned from your experience dating as a first gen African?
Build your build your ability to lead and trust in your leadership abilities, trust in the process, trust in yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and make up your mind, bro. Make up your mind and make a decision. And I'll say the biggest of them all is like stop chasing what is pleasurable. You know, stop chasing what is or let pleasure not be at the forefront of everything. You know,
Right.
let it be
Right.
something that is more rooted into something substantial.
Mm-hmm.
You know, character, for example.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that's one thing that one thing that I've learned, and that's one thing that's actually saved me. It's very very intentional that I do not have 3 children or 4 children with 4 different women. Very very intentional.
Good job, Boo.
You know what I'm saying?
You beat the statistics.
Look, it's wild out here.
Through and through.
Mm.
Me, I think the biggest lesson for me as a first gen African is, especially as a woman, is prioritize building a strong foundation for yourself and don't depend on a man to come and do that for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because then you will have better discernment when it comes to picking a man because you're not picking him for your survival.
Mm-hmm.
You're picking him for sustainability, for that relationship to last, and you're picking him for a quality life. Like literally, you're picking him for a quality life. So in the meantime, while you are sifting through and trying to figure out like what you're looking for, get your shit together. Go to school, get your money up, have some skills. Like a lot of African girls, look, some of us, we are very okay not being able to meet our own basic needs. Like, it blows me. It really does. You should be able to take care of yourself. If you have other people who are taking care of you, that is a privilege and that is great. But don't just sit and kick your feet up because you're going to go from your father's house to a man's house and that man is going to be able to do things up under your nose that because you didn't take the time or because you didn't think you had to know the fundamentals, the basics of living, especially in this country, you
Mm-hmm.
thought that that man would handle it for you and he do you dirty.
Mm-hmm.
He do your ass dirty. So don't, marriage is a wonderful beautiful thing,
Mm-hmm.
but marriage is not a meal ticket or something. Like don't wait for that man to be the reason why you start getting your life together. Start now. And our dating world is hell. Yeah, like I said, it's a mess. It's a mess up out here, but people are still getting married. Like people are still getting married,
They
and I
are.
think for the most part, we will all end up in relationships. But yeah, like I said, don't wait. Don't be sitting there and waiting and say, oh, when the man comes, then he can pay for my school, or
Mm-hmm.
when the man comes, then I'll start traveling, or when the man comes, then I'll figure out what career I want. No, start now.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're in your parents' house, start now.
Mm-hmm.
Start
Mm-hmm.
now. So
To the men specifically, um, look, I understand that based on what I see, there's really an epidemic as far as when it comes to the leadership within men of all races now. I think society in general has made life extremely simple for men and women. And the things that were embedded in society that made men men, technology has facilitated those things and it is working against men. You know, once upon a time, to be a man, you needed to really know how to build a house and do
mhm,
certain things, and that qualified you that you were a man. Now you could buy a house. You know, now niggas are scamming and getting their money however they're getting their money, and the tenets of what makes a man is no longer there. And there's certain
mm,
things within those tenets of manhood where men find themselves. Men in general, you find who you are through work and suffering. That is the truth. Through
yeah,
work and suffering is where you find your identity as a man. And I will beg for anybody to question me and to challenge me on that particular point. I don't know how it is for women, but for men, that is where you find your
I beg,
identity.
I don't suffer in this life,
You
please.
know? Um, and I would say that for the men, just bro, I understand that some men don't have masculine role models. When you're taking advice from these, or you're taking guidance and lessons from these podcasts, take it with a grain of salt. Don't
Mm,
take so much of this stuff to the heart. I see what it's doing to men. It is poisoning your minds. Take it with a grain of salt, I beg of you, because a lot of men go into the dating market with this preconceived notion that women are terrible, and women do too, I guess. But I'm more concerned with the men because I'm a man. With this preconceived notion that women are out to get you, they're terrible. Da, 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 da. It's not a very good mindset to go. It's not healthy, and it poisons everything around you. It poisons what you believe, what you talk about, how you feel about yourself, what you think the general conversation about what is going on in the world is about. Like it really poisons your mind. Take a
mm-hmm.
step back and just understand that as a man, you have a purpose in this world. Find out your purpose and do that to the best of your ability, and expect that whether you meet man or woman, assume that they have the best intention at heart before you meet them, and let them prove you wrong. That's
Right.
how I approach, situations with people in general. I
That was good.
assume that you have the best intention and that you're a good person until you show me otherwise. And
Mm-hmm.
and that's for the most part. And I promise you, for the men, if you just tweak this part, things will work out for you very, very well.
And I have one more thing to say
Go
too,
ahead.
because you made a point earlier, and you just kind of said it again, and it made me think again. One of the other biggest lessons I've learned dating as a first gen is, as a woman, I'm 26 years old.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I do not expect a man within 10 years of my age, 36, to have everything, all his shit together to be a millionaire.
Mhm.
I am more concerned about a man who is ambitious, a man who is hardworking, a man who has good character, than a man who can provide and pay for everything, do everything. Because 9 times out of 10, especially with social media, you're only seeing what people show you,
Yeah.
and it's not sustainable. In a year or two, they're not going to be able to live that life. So, in as a woman, in trying to look for a good partner, I'm looking for somebody who is always going to put in effort. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to have everything together right now. Like, I don't need a man who's driving the flyest car, who got the flyest apartment, who just pay for everything. I don't even need all that. Cause number one, I can take care of myself.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm looking for is a man that I know in partnership when shit hit the fan, or when we are trying to grow and we are trying to expand our opportunities, expand our quality of life. That is a man that is going to put in the all the effort that I need him to and do his best. So
So.
my advice to the women, in the same breath, like, a lot of these podcasts for women too are very extreme.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're very extreme. They're mean. They're so fucking mean. And
Yeah.
they tear down, like, I feel like they do tear down the self-esteem of men in the same way that they're trying to tear down the self-esteem of women. And I think, especially as African women, like, we have the benefit of coming from very hardworking men. Like, my father is a very hardworking man, so I know that I can evaluate a future partner through the lens of the work ethic of my father, and that is important to me
Mm-hmm.
because my father was able to raise a big old family, put a roof over our heads. He
Mm-hmm.
never had no scandals,
Mm-hmm.
and not that I know of. Like, I would rather have a man that I know you always gonna try, you always gonna do your best, and you are a good person,
Yep. Yep.
and you not gonna whoop my ass.
No,
That's what I'm
facts,
looking
facts,
for.
facts. No, that's a
You gonna
big
keep
one.
your
That's a
damn
big one.
hands to yourself. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So
I agree.
yeah, in this world, like, with how hard dating is, like, character is really
It
everything,
really
man. Like,
is.
that
It
shit is
really
becoming
is.
scarce. People are always trying to pull a fast one. People are always trying to find a fast way to get things done. And
Mm-hmm.
take your time, but look for character. That'll
I
last.
agree. I agree.
Anything else, Tassie?
Man. So yeah, look for character. For the woman, please don't. I understand resources are important. I do. I get it. If you could get the rich man with great character and everything, that should be the priority and everything. But what I will say is that prioritize character first, then resources.
Yeah.
Because when you prioritize resources first and character, you get a ditty.
That man going.
You
What's that saying?
you get a ditty.
If well, a diddler.
You get a diddler. You know?
So if that man can feed you, he can starve you, girl. So
You know?
take that with a grain of salt. Anyway, thank you all for joining us for this great
Thank
episode,
you,
and we'll
thank
catch
you.
you in the next
For
one.
sure.
Bye.
You want to see Kelele? Roll up my weed, let me be Kelele. As I spend my money.